Cannery Row, Chapter 23, Part 2 of Chapter 23. "It has always seemed strange to me," said Doc. "The things we admire in men, kindness and generosity, openness, honesty, understanding and feeling, are the concomitants of failure in our system. And those traits we detest, sharpness, greed, acquisitiveness, meanness, egotism, and self-interest, are the traits of success. And while men admire the quality of the first, they love the produce of the second." "Who wants to be good if he has to be hungry too?" said Richard Frost. "Oh, it isn't a matter of hunger. It's something quite different. The sale of souls to gain the whole world is completely voluntary and almost unanimous, but not quite. Everywhere in the world there are Mac and the boys. I've seen them in an ice cream cellar in Mexico and in an Aleut in Alaska. You know how they tried to give me a party and something went wrong? But they wanted to give me a party. That was their impulse." "Listen," said Doc. "Isn't that the band I hear?" Quickly he filled 2 glasses with beer, and the 2 of them stepped close to the window. Mac and the boys sat dejectedly on their log and faced the laboratory. The sound of the band came from Lighthouse Avenue, the drums echoing back from the buildings, and suddenly the mayor's car crossed and it sprayed bunting from the radiator. Then Long Bob on his white horse carrying the flag, then the band, then the soldiers, the Elks, the Knights Templar, the Knights of Columbus. Richard and the Doc leaned forward tensely, but they were watching the line of men sitting on the log. And not a head turned, not a neck straightened up. The parade filed past, and they did not move, and the parade was gone. Doc drained his glass and waved 2 fingers gently in the air, and he said, "Ha! There's nothing in the world like that first taste of beer." Richard started for the door. "What kind of beer do you want?" "Oh, the same kind," said Doc gently. He was smiling up the hill at Mac and the boys. "It's all fine to say. Time will heal everything. This too shall pass. People will forget, and things like that when you are not involved. But when you are, there is no passage of time. People do not forget, and you are in the middle of something that does not change." Doc didn't know the pain and self-destructive criticism in the Palace Flophouse, or he might have tried to do something about it. And Mac and the boys did not know how he felt, or they would have held up their heads again. It was a bad time. Evil stalked darkly in the vacant lot. Sam Malloy had a number of fights with his wife, and she cried all the time. The echoes inside the boiler made it sound as though she were crying underwater. Mac and the boys seemed to be the node of trouble. The nice bouncer at the Bear Flag threw out a drunk, but threw him too hard and too far and broke his back. Alfred had to go over to Salinas 3 times before it was cleared up, and that didn't make Alfred feel very well. Ordinarily, he was too good a bouncer to hurt anyone. His A&C was a miracle of rhythm and grace. On top of that, a group of high-minded ladies in the town demanded that dens of vice must close to protect young American manhood. This happened about once a year in the dead period between the 4th of July and the county fair. Dora usually closed the Bear Flag for a week when it happened. It wasn't so bad. Everyone got a vacation and little repairs to the plumbing and the walls could be made. But this year the ladies went on a real crusade. They wanted somebody's scalp. It had been a dull summer and they were restless. It got so bad that they had to be told who actually owned the property where vice was practiced, what the rents were, and what little hardships might be the result of their closing. That was how close they were to being a serious menace. Dora was closed a full 2 weeks, and there were 3 conventions in Monterey while the Bear Flag was closed. Word got around, and Monterey lost 5 conventions for the following year. Things were bad all over. Doc had to get a loan at the bank to pay for the glass that was broken at the party. Elmer Ricciati went to sleep on the Southern Pacific track and lost both legs. A sudden and completely unexpected storm tore a purse seiner and 3 Lampara boats loose from their moorings and tossed them broken and sad on Del Monte Beach. There is no explaining a series of misfortunes like that. Every man blames himself. People in their black minds remember sins committed secretly and wonder whether they have caused the evil sequence. One man may put it down to sunspots, while another, invoking the law of probabilities, doesn't believe it. Not even the doctors had a good time of it, for while many people were sick, none of it was good paying business. It was nothing a good physic or a patent medicine wouldn't take care of. And to cap it all, Darling got sick. She was a very fat and lively puppy when she was struck down, but 5 days of fever reduced her to a little skin-covered skeleton. Her liver-colored nose was pink, and her gums were white, her eyes glazed with illness, and her whole body was hot, although she trembled sometimes with cold. She wouldn't eat, and she wouldn't drink, and her fat little belly shriveled up against her spine, and even her tail showed the articulations through the skin. It was obviously distemper. Now, a genuine panic came over the Palace Flophouse. Darling had come to be vastly important to them. Hughie and Jones instantly quit their jobs so they could be near to help. They sat up in shifts. They kept a cool, damp cloth on her forehead, and she got weaker and sicker. Finally, although they didn't want to, Hazel and Jones were chosen to call on Doc. They found him working over a tide chart while he ate a chicken stew, of which the principal ingredient was not chicken, but sea cucumber. They thought he looked at them a little coldly. "It's Darling," they said. "She's sick." "What's the matter with her?" "Mac says it's distemper." "I'm no veterinarian," said Doc. "I don't know how to treat these things." Hazel said, "Well, couldn't you just take a look at her? She's sick as hell." They stood in a circle while Doc examined Darling. He looked at her eyeballs and her gums and felt in her ear for fever. He ran his finger over the ribs that stuck out like spokes and at the poor spine. "She won't eat?" he asked. "Not a thing," said Mac. "You'll have to force-feed her strong soup and eggs and cod liver oil." They thought he was cold and professional. He went back to his tide charts and his stew.